Former President Donald Trump is celebrating his 78th birthday on Friday with a ticketed event for his Club 47 fan club in Florida. The event comes as Trump makes a push for the youth vote. Maddie Rivera has more details.
Former President Donald Trump having a bit of fun with YouTube star Logan Paul on TikTok, a post that's racked up more than 70 million views. And while Trump has criticized the social platform for its ties to China, the Trump campaign thinks it's a good way to reach youth voters.
You know, we're doing great with youth. We're doing great with African Americans, with Hispanic Americans, through the roof.
You might think the former president, who turns 78 years old today, might have a hard time connecting with a younger generation. But his social media presence and appearances with popular influencers like Paul are helping Trump get a slight edge over Biden with youth voters.
You've got to reach people where they are, right? And you got to go to them and give them what they want.
President Biden's popularity with America's youth has taken some hits recently over his support for Israel and immigration policy changes. But polling also shows Trump has an edge in economic policy.
What would you say to them, kids who want to pursue their own version of the American dream?
I would say very simply, honestly, vote for Trump. Because with Biden, you're never going to do it.
The number one thing for young voters is affordability for housing. And so they're looking at that and saying, between Joe Biden and Donald Trump in terms of the economy, I'm better off under Trump.
While President Biden and former President Trump each enjoy leads with certain demographics on some key issues, overall, Trump leads Biden by less than 1% in national pollings. In Washington, Matt Rivera, Fox 32 Chicago.
Poll also has young voters disapproving of the president's handling of the Israel-Hamas war by a pretty big margin. Do you think that this is contributing to the drag on his support with young voters?
Yeah, I think unlike the such a kind of horse race, these numbers have been pretty consistent from poll over poll over poll, and yet roughly, a fifth to a quarter approve, which means a solid majority disapprove of that. And I think this is an era where foreign policy does matter. We know that, the president's honeymoon was interrupted by Afghanistan in 2021. And we know now also that younger people, have a fundamental different perspective regarding the Israel-Hamas war than their parents and their grandparents. And they prioritize, as we can see in these numbers and other polls, they prioritize protecting civilians. They are sickened by what happened October 7th, but they also are prioritizing the innocent Palestinians on the other side. And they're telling us.
It comes as a new NBC poll finds the president's support among young voters dropped 15 percentage points since September.
Not focusing on that, we've seen protests around the country, large ones in D.C., large ones in other places all over the United States, where young voters are really turning up to say, we don't agree with this administration. And now what we're seeing is polling to back that up.
And you're also seeing protests happening on college campuses where young voters are. You would think that the president will want to get out into the field and have conversations with young voters and talk to them about what the administration is doing, right? So far, we're not seeing that. We're seeing this kind of like bubble wrap of this president and make sure that he stays in the White House, make sure that they can control all aspects of the message right now. Right. And I don't think you can play it safe at this point. We're seeing that the poll numbers are going south for this president.
Right.
In the 2024 U.S. presidential election rematch between Democratic President Joe Biden and Republican candidate Donald Trump, the outcome will likely come down to close races in a few key swing states. And to avoid repeating his 2020 loss, Trump is hoping to capitalize on what may be eroding support for Biden among a key constituency, young voters. The youth vote is seen by Republicans as one way to take Wisconsin, one of the 6 or 7 battleground states set to determine the election.
And I think Trump is one of the only men that has actually had the balls on him, so to say, to call out these people and not be afraid.
So former President Trump apparently is gaining with more young American voters, cutting President Biden's lead among 18 to 29-year-old registered voters by more than 20 points.
The Biden campaign and its allies are attempting to snag young and old voters by luring them in with really important things, policies like affordable, no, I'm just kidding, beer and pickleball, respectively. Now, let's start with the youth who Biden is in deep trouble with, thanks to...
all right, let me start with you. Why do you think we're seeing that dynamic in the polling, that Biden is gaining with older voters and Trump is gaining with younger voters, when last time around their strengths were the opposite?